Want to bring in Michelle Ngela to introduce the guest this morning who's going to be discussing this and looking at road carnage. Michelle.
That's right, Michael. And with me in studio, Duncan Kipogong, who is the Deputy Director from the National Transport and Safety Authority. He'll be breaking down what those numbers that you just gave us mean. But of course, earlier on, I did mention a statistic that you are more likely to die on our roads if you're a pedestrian than any other category of road users in the country. And that's where we'd like to begin. Many thanks for joining us on Morning Express, Duncan.
Thank you.
Let's begin with those shocking statistics. Pedestrians accounting for the highest number of fatalities on our roads as it is. 3 out of every 5 road deaths is a pedestrian. Why is that?
Indeed, yes. You're right, Michelle, that the statistics you've just put are actually our statistics. We generated them in NTSA. Pedestrians are the most vulnerable group of road users. They're the people who are injured more and they're killed more on our roads. So much so that, as you said, that up to 38–39% of road fatalities last year are pedestrians. Why that happens is because of a number of factors. One, you need that as a pedestrian, you are a special type of road user because you're actually exposed to the actual force and the impact when there is a crash. So in that case, then you realize that they get injured more. 2 is because we've noted that most of our pedestrians do not use the designated crossing points. And if the fact that they don't use the designated crossing points, then it exposes them to the risk of that road traffic crash. And indeed, we do not have enough crossing points across the country. And you've seen most of our major highways, actually the reason major highways have some of those particular crossing points. But traditionally and in the recent past, they've not been there. So as a government, we are working to improve on that as well.
So pedestrian facilities need an increase in the country, but also our driving culture does not really give way for the rights of the pedestrian, because as it is, the likes of Thika Superhighway or Mombasa Road, for example, they do have a pedestrian walkway, but there's no designation between the use of pedestrians on foot and motorized. Motorbikes are always using that same path.
Absolutely, and that is also the behavior of the motorists themselves is wanting. And that is one of the things we've always been trying to enforce and educate the motorists to respect the pedestrians, because this, the roads do not just belong to the motorists, but they belong both to the motorists and the pedestrians. And that is why at times we say in the city of Nairobi, the average speed limit is 50 kilometers per hour.
Right.
And even going further to other areas whereby the risk of pedestrians is high, like around schools, we recommend that speed should even go lower. But you find that most of the time when we say that the speed limits within Nairobi should go low, there's a reason to that, because the reason is that when you are hit at that particular speed, then the likelihood of survival is quite high. Unlike what many people believe, that the speed should be higher than that.
Right.
And that is all across the globe. So motorists need to respect also the pedestrians as a way forward.
All right, and let us move away from the pedestrians. But of course, many would dispute a 50 kilometer per hour speed, especially on a superhighway, because what is the point of having a superhighway? And so most would expect that we have enough pedestrian facilities, we have enough footbridges, we have zebra crossings that are actually respected. Because if you walk on the street right now, you'll see Kenyans literally running across a zebra crossing when it's their right to comfortably walk across.
Absolutely, and that is how it's supposed to be. Ideally, a superhighway or an highway, a superhighway for that matter, a pedestrian should not have a conflict with the motorists or the motorized traffic. But you find that even what we define as a superhighway here in Kenya is not really a superhighway, because you still find that pedestrians still cross the road. Either because of not following the law, or because at times it's not available. So that is the case. Even when you check here in Mombasa Road, which is just right outside your studios, it is a highway. But the problem is that we have the footbridges and all other facilities are far apart. But as I said, that was something which the government is correcting, and that's why you've seen in the recent past the Kenya National Highway Authority and government at large have been putting up the pedestrian fence, the pedestrian footbridges along across to help the people cross.
All right, Duncan, maybe this war may ultimately be won if we're able to, first of all, educate the driver and the pedestrian, because at the end of the day, whether we put 50 kilometers or 40 kilometers, these rules have to be obeyed by the driver or the pedestrian, knowing where to cross and all that. How do we get that information to the driver to a point where maybe we penalize? For instance, if somebody is caught going over a certain speed twice, their driving license is revoked. Because when it is not punitive, then it's likely that people will just disregard the law because the laws are there.
Yes, absolutely. You're right that we have fairly adequate laws on this. We are enforcing some of these laws, and what you're saying exactly is what we are doing as NTSA and together with our partners. The issue of having people punished for their mistake is something which you're doing. And the issue of education as well comes very pertinent. We sensitize the members of the public all across and at any one time, including the pedestrians, the motorists, the motorcycle riders, and everyone else to obey the law. And not just to obey the law for the sake of obeying the law but to obey the law and ensure that issues of road safety are shifted from to themselves. Because safety is something which is personal. It cannot be for government alone, but we want the safety culture to be transformed from it just being for the purposes of government or for purposes of following the law, but it's shifted accordingly so that it becomes a personal responsibility. So the issues of education and public awareness are ongoing, but on top of that, we are also having the issues to do with the enforcement of the same. And as NTSA, we are coming up with all those rules whereby even up to including loss of your license is quite important. As you may know, or I would like to inform the members of the public and the viewers at large, that NTSA is coming up with what we call instant fine regime, whereby if you are a driver, you'll be losing your points because of some of those mistakes. When you cross a red line, then you lose some points. The current law says that you have a maximum of 14 points. But you can lose that points as fast as just once because, for example, if you drink and drive, then you lose your 14 points and you lose your license.
And I understand that this is a good incentive for good motorists because these same points can also be used to have lesser or cheaper insurance premiums for good drivers. Talk to us about those incentives.
Yes, what we are saying is that one of the ways is that we want to incentivize good driving. And how we incentivize good driving is not just about punishing the bad ones, but ensuring that those ones who are good are rewarded as well. And here we are saying that we are working with the insurance companies, and it's something which is ongoing. We are discussing it in advanced stage. And at some point, if you will be sharing your data, your driving behavior with the insurance companies, so much so that if you are a bad driver, then your insurance level go higher because the likelihood of you causing a crash is higher. And if you are a good driver, such that if a whole year pass will go by, and depending on how the insurance interpret that, they may even get you a free ride for the next 1 year or so. I don't know. But that is the type of the thing. Incentivize good driving, all driving, and punish bad drivers as well.
Then NTSA, now in the view of the driver and majority of Kenyans, they are viewed as a body that just does operations, punishes, then disappears. How can this be kept consistent? Especially, let's talk about drink driving, because that's what they're probably very well known for. You'll have operations in certain areas for a period of time, then after that they move. And that, of course, does not necessarily deal with the problem.
And they've become so well known that we even have Facebook pages now, NTSA on Mombasa Road. So don't go through Mombasa Road, use the other road.
Yeah, that is, I'll start with what you've asked me last about the people using the social media fora to say where you are. That is, we know the technology can be, or some of these things can be used positively, but negatively. And indeed, I can tell you that is one of the way of misusing technology here. Because if you are telling someone to avoid some particular road because the police or NTSA are there, to me that is a responsibility of the highest order. But that notwithstanding, on the aspect which you've asked that what do, we are actually doing this. As a matter of fact, NTSA came into play about 2-3 years, okay, let's say 4 years ago. Indeed, you are a young baby, but what you've seen you're doing is quite massive. And we're going to do massive campaigns, massive education programs, school safety programs, among so many others, including, of course, you know, that part and parcel of work even to check the roadworthiness of vehicle in terms of motor vehicle inspection, bringing the PSV sector into order, trying to bring the motorcycle sector into order, among others. So those are some of the things. Some of the things you think or what may appear to be erratic is indeed not erratic because it's quite well planned in our operational plans.
Right.
Yeah, so that is how you work.
Just before we wind up, you earlier mentioned that the UN is carrying out a road safety week in the country. How long is this going to spin, and what are we likely to see from NTSA during this week?
Yes, the UN Road Safety Week starts from 8 to 14th of this month. This is a day dedicated by the UN General Assembly and drew a declaration that road safety becomes a topic of the day in, day out, because as a matter of fact, we are talking about 1.3 million people dying every year across the globe. And that is huge. As we speak currently, it is the 8th cause of death. And by 2030, if nothing is going to be done, we are talking road crashes being the 5th cause of death, beating HIV, far more than TB and many other. Malaria, of course, even as we speak, it kills more. So we are sensitizing people all across the country. Enforcement levels, of course, are going to be quite high. But the whole aspect is that we want everyone to reflect that is it worth getting or having injuries or death on our roads?
Right.
The answer is no.
All right.
So let's all pull up our resources. Let's all go and ensure that we have road safety to become our own personal responsibility.
Thank you very much, Duncan Kipogong, Deputy Director from the National Transport and Safety Authority. Many thanks for speaking to us. And we close that conversation now, but just a reminder of our question of the day. Mike.
And yes, that question of the day before we close the show is whether you would be influenced by the presidential debate. Remember, that was also the main focus of our newsroom debate this morning. And well, the question we wanted to find out from you is whether you would be influenced by the presidential debate. And let me just read a few comments before I come back to you, Michelle, and you can also read a few of what you have. And we have Jackie, who says the presidential debate may not affect how we vote, but helps Kenyans engage their leaders on issues. We also have Odipo Isaac, who says it will not change my mind. Let me read one more. Hazardamos, who says apart from the obvious two, I know Professor Wainaina, Dida, and Nazlin.
All right, and more comments coming in here. Isaac says set a day for all independent candidates, and then set a day for all independent parties, and then set a day for coalitions, just to ensure that everybody, just to ensure that everybody takes part in these debates. We have Livingston Maura says, why not conduct a new poll survey and set the threshold? Of course, this is just trying to figure out how 18 presidential candidates will fit into one debate. And so, of course, many, of course, saying that Raymax saying presidential debates will not change my mind on who to vote for. I have already decided. All right, thank you so much for speaking to us. That is the question that we're asking, whether these presidential debates would change your choice of presidential candidate. 16% of you say yes, it might, but 84% say their mind is made up, and no, it will not change their minds.
All right, and that's where we wind up the show this morning. Thank you so very much for joining us. And remember, we start at 5 a.m. So, well, it's been a good show. Thank you for keeping us company. Have yourselves a good day. My name is Michael Gitong.
And my name is Michelle Gale. I'll be seeing you at the top of the hour on Worldview.